Hello everyone. In this basic tutorial on Substance Painter, made for those of you who are really starting from zero with this software, we will see the fundamental settings to create a new Substance project and the characteristics that a 3D file must have to be imported into a new Substance project, especially as regards the UV unwrapping for textures, as we will see. I must say that this will be a rather theoretical video tutorial, in the sense that I will talk about a couple of topics. I will not show any practical operation of creating the materials or anything else. Let's start with the file format. Substance accepts various types of file formats to import a 3D model into a project, but the ones I recommend you look for, if you are buying or downloading files from the web, or to do, if you are exporting an object from a 3D modeling software, such as Blender 3D, 3D Studio Max or others, are the OBJ and FBX formats, as they are portable, universal formats, which can be opened or written by many 3D modeling softwares that deal with meshes, which are objects defined by vertices, edges and faces, and because they carry the information about the materials and UV layout with which the models have been defined. I talked about the materials, especially PBR ones, in a video tutorial previously published in the Substance Painter playlist. So we know that it is a set of information that defines how the surface of the object will reflect light. In some 3D modeling softwares it is also possible to assign submaterials to an object, and this information is available in the files exported in FBX and OBJ. We will see very soon what it means, with a practical example. Let's briefly introduce the UV Unwrap 2. I'm going to show an example about this topic. It is a map, or layout, the representation of the surface of a 3D object on a 2D plane, called UV space. In practice, it consists in cutting the surfaces, along the seams, and arranging them on a bidimensional space. In this way you can associate a point of this 2D image to the 3D surface. Then you can draw logos or other graphic elements on the plane and find them applied correctly to the 3D object. Note that Substance Painter 2019 will not import 3D models without a UV layout, and will point the problem out with a message in the Log tab, which you can activate from Window, Views, Log. So, let's see how to create a new Substance project, import an FBX file, and check the materials and UV layout of the model. In the description of this video you will find a link to my website, where you'll be able to download the 3D model I am using. Anyway, it is not necessary to have this model. You can learn by watching the video tutorial without replicating the operations shown here. In this video tutorial we will limit ourselves to importing the model into a new Substance project. We will not define any material and we will not export any texture, so there is really no need to have this item in particular. The first thing to do, after starting Substance Painter 2019, is obviously to click on File, New. The shortcut is Ctrl-N. In the new project window that appears, we will find some options, but not all of them must be set. The first item, Template, asks us which preset to load. Depending on the type of workflow we want to use in Substance, we can choose for example PBR Specular, PBR Metallic, or Unity, or, again, use a template created by us, such as the METP 2019, defined by me. Substance will then load some basic settings, so that we can find the tools we need for a certain purpose. In our case, we choose PBR, Metallic Roughness, Algorithmic, to use the tools of the metallic workflow, briefly described in a tutorial I published previously. Take a look at the Substance Painter playlist. We must therefore choose the 3D model file to use. Let's then click on the Select button and choose, from disk, a 3D model in one of the formats accepted by Substance. In my case, I'm choosing American Football Ball, an FBX file. This time you can leave the other settings of the New Project tab as default. I want to tell you, however, that the Document Resolution property must not be the one with which you want to export the textures. Here you can set a lower resolution, such as 1024, which should be the default one, in order to work using fewer computing resources, more fluidly, than choosing a higher resolution, such as 2048 or 4096 per side, when exporting the materials. Let's set 1024, in this case, then click OK to create the new project. The very first thing to do now is to save the project. Substance Painter crashes from time to time, so it's best to save everything first and remember to save now and then. However, Substance should automatically generate autosaves too. You will find them in the project folder. They are really useful for recovering your work, but they take up a lot of disk space, so you must also remember to delete them. Let's take a look at the project. In the 3D window you should see the object framed from the front. In Material View mode, take a look at the drop-down menu at the top right, or press the M key shortcut for Material. To rotate the view around the object, press Alt and left mouse button at the same time, while moving the mouse. To zoom in and out, use the mouse wheel or Alt and right mouse button, simultaneously, while moving the mouse. To pan, press Alt and middle mouse button, simultaneously, while moving the mouse. In short, to change the point of view, use Alt and the mouse keys. However, you can edit these and other shortcuts from Edit, Settings, Shortcuts, in Camera Rotate, Camera Translate, and Camera Zoom, especially if you don't have a 3-button mouse. By pressing F, shortcut for Frame, you can bring the object back to the center of the view. In the main window of the program there should be some tabs such as Layers, Textures Setlist and others. However, you can add or remove tabs and bars using the window menu items. After that, you can arrange the tabs as you prefer, by clicking on their names and moving them in the interface, possibly placing them side by side in the same slot, to save some screen space. The information on the materials available in the file and associated with the object or the objects of the scene can be found in the texture set list. In fact, a texture set is a material. In this tab, as the name suggests, we can find them all. In our case we have only one material, which therefore covers the entire surface. In the next video tutorials I will show you some practical examples with various objects that will have, from time to time, one or more 3D objects, or various sub-materials for the same object. For example, here I could have put two different sub-materials for the main body of the object and for the laces, or strings. But I preferred to use a single material instead, so the various areas will be textured using masks that will apply some materials in certain places, and other materials in other places. So let's take a look at the UV layout of the model by clicking on the first icon of the group at the top right corner of the 3D view. This will allow us to display just the 3D view, the 2D view only, which shows the UV layout for the selected texture set, and both the 3D and the 2D views, side by side. I'm choosing this last option, 3D and 2D, shortcut, F1. Here you can see in practice the famous UV unwrapping, or UV layout, of the model. We can identify the laces and the main body of the object. Using such an unwrapping, where the various objects are grouped following a certain logic, it will be quite easy to create masks to associate the textures and other effects only to certain parts of the object, even when using, as in this case, just a single 3D object and one material, or, as we should say, one texture set. Another small note about UV unwrapping. It can be with or without overlapping, in the sense that some parts could overlap and, therefore, the textures and filters applied in those points will be visible in more parts of the object. Most of the time you will want UVs without overlapping parts, or non-overlapping UV, to avoid the clone or tiled effect on the surface of the object, but the overlapping option is useful, for example, for the leaves of a tree. Instead of unwrapping and texturing each leaf individually, an almost impossible job, and also an expensive one, from the point of view of hardware resources, you can create the textures for 4 or 5 different leaves, then use that textures for all the leaves, unwrapping and overlapping the leaves on the 4 layouts created before, so as to make all the leaves appear slightly different from each other, in a fraction of the time needed for a non-overlapping unwrap. In summary, when you are looking for a 3D model on the web or are creating your own and you want to export it to texturize it in Substance Painter, keep an eye on these 2 topics. The file format, possibly of the OBJ or FBX type, as these are almost universal formats and also contain information on the UV layout and the materials and sub-materials associated with the 3D object, or objects, packed in the file. And the UV layout, which must be available, otherwise Substance Painter 2019 will not open the file, and which, depending on your needs, must be overlapping or non-overlapping. Well, for this tutorial we stop here. As anticipated at the beginning of the tutorial, we're not going to see any practical operation of defining materials or anything else right now. But this tutorial and the one on the PBR theory, previously published, are the only two purely theoretical in the Substance Painter playlist. Starting from the next one, I will talk about the various topics through practical examples on video. I invite you to express doubts, questions or requests in the comments of the video, on YouTube.